Hello Biology 130 students, and welcome to Columbia College's course on an introduction to human anatomy and physiology. This video is meant to be a basic introduction to the course and how the course works. If you're viewing this video, you've already found your way to the Moodle website for the course, and you'll see that you can also read a much more detailed introduction to how the course works. This one is just to basically just to run through the easy things with you and give you an idea of what you will do, what you'll be doing every week if you decide to take this course and stay in this course. So we'll begin with the basics. My name is Greg Doheny. That's me over there. Some of you have taken me for other courses. If so, welcome back. My email address is shown below my name, gdoheny@columbiacollege.ca. You can, if you have questions about the course, you can always email me, but as you'll see, there's also a question forum, basically a bulletin board on the course Moodle site where you can post questions in public, and I will answer them in public. And that way other students who may have the same question can see what the answer is. So you can email me at the college through my email address, or if you have general questions about the course or specific questions about the course material, you can put them on the questions forum on the Moodle page. Now we will have office hours for this course. We're not doing the course in person due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but we will still be holding office hours. You are not required to attend the office hours, but the office hours are Mondays from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And the office hours will be carried out on Microsoft Teams over the webcam. You are not required to attend, and if you do decide to attend, you are not required to turn on your camera. My camera will be on unless I start having internet connection problems, in which case I might turn my camera off just because it lowers the load of data that's trying to travel over my internet server. But otherwise my camera will be on, but yours does not have to be. Now this is a synchronous version of this course is delivered over the internet, but it is considered to be a synchronous course, which means that some of the course has to be done by you in real time. And in particular, the course is listed as being Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. The Wednesday section is reserved for the lab activities. So Wednesday from 4 to 6, you definitely need to be available because you will be taking tests and quizzes on Wednesday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So make sure that you have that 2-hour block. Make sure that 2-hour block is cleared on your weekly calendar, because you will be taking a quiz that's worth 2% of your grade and an open book exercise which is worth another 2% of your grade, for a total of 4% of your grade every Wednesday. So make sure that you have kept that spot on your weekly calendar free. Okay, as for the textbooks, there are 2 textbooks that you can use for this course. One of them is a required textbook, which is called the Anatomy Coloring Workbook by Edward Alcamo, the 4th edition. And you will absolutely need this book because you'll be using it every week. You'll be reading it every week and using it as a reference guide every week. You can order it through Amazon.com or .ca or a lot of other places. Chapters sells it. You can buy it in most bookstores if you want to risk going into a bookstore. And if you have a friend who's taken this course before and they have their old book and they're willing to give it to you or sell it to you, that's fine as well. So the required textbook, Anatomy Coloring Workbook, is required, and you should get that as soon as possible because you will start using it in the second week of the course. And there's another textbook which is recommended but not essential. It's a free book that is delivered through a website called OpenStax, openstax.com, and it is the OpenStax Anatomy and Physiology book by Betts et al. I'll show you how to get that book as well. It's free. It's recommended but not required because it generally has more information in that book than you need for this course. But I would advise that you, actually I would require that you download it as well, because at the end of the semester we will actually be doing we will actually be doing reading exercises where you're supposed to be reading this book in real time and answering questions about it as an open book exercise. So I should change this from recommended to required. It's also required that you at least download and have the OpenStax Anatomy textbook. Okay, so once again, the office hours for this course. They will be from 4 to 5 on Mondays. They will be delivered through Microsoft Teams over the internet, so you don't have to have your computer camera on, but I'll have mine on. I will be sending you, or I'll be sending you a document, and also there's a document on the Moodle page that tells you how to get the Microsoft Teams application if you don't already have it. So you simply install the Microsoft Teams application on your phone, and then I will be adding you all to a team called the Biology 130 team, and you will have a calendar that tells you that every Monday you can attend this meeting. As I said, you're not required to attend. It's only a suggestion. You can come there and ask me questions if you want. You can ask for clarification. You can ask for advice or anything like that. And so that will be every Monday from 4 to 5 through Microsoft Teams. The required textbooks. The Anatomy Coloring Workbook is a, now don't laugh, it's a coloring book, like a children's coloring book, but in reality it's actually been proven scientifically to help you to learn about anatomy and physiology by completing coloring book exercises. So this book, even though it's relatively cheap and it doesn't look very serious and it doesn't look very somber, looks kind of fun, but it actually is a very useful book for learning anatomy and physiology. So I would order this book as soon as you can. You can buy it through Amazon as well as a lot of other places. I would also, if you want, buy some crayons. You'll need 4 crayons, red, green, blue, and yellow. And then you can complete the weekly coloring exercises. So every week I'm going to be assigning a chapter out of this book that you have to read. And I'm not requiring you to do the coloring exercise, but it would help. If we were taking this course live at the college, I would be assigning you a coloring exercise every week that you have to complete, and then I would be checking to make sure that you actually did the coloring book exercise in the lab. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to write the quiz for that week. But anyway, get yourself a copy of the Anatomy Coloring Workbook. On the inside, it has anatomy diagrams, and it will tell you to do things like color the parietal plate of the skull blue, and color the occipital plate of the skull red, and color the frontal plate of the skull yellow, and then you'll do that with the crayons and end up with something that looks a little bit like that. And while you're doing this coloring, you will learn the names of all of these bones and muscles and arteries and veins, and that's the whole idea. As I said, you can order the Anatomy Coloring Workbook through Amazon.ca, as well as a lot of other places, or you can even buy, if you can get used copies of it, that's fine. The only condition is that it has to be the 4th edition, and it has to be the right book. It has to be by Edward Alcamo, and it's from the Princeton Review series. And it has to be the 4th edition. If you buy another edition, the assignments, the reading assignments that I give you may not be on the same pages, so I would avoid other editions of the book. But if you can get a 4th edition of this book anywhere you like, that's fine. That's all you need. All right, the other book. There is a website, you can Google it, called OpenStax, OPENSTAX, just like up here. Right? And if you go to that website and then search for the Anatomy and Physiology book by Betts et al., it will take you to this web page. Notice that down here you can either view the book online, which I don't recommend, or you can download a PDF of the book, which I do recommend. And I would say download this book definitely, because towards the end of the course we will be doing some open book exercises where you have to read a chapter from this book and then answer questions about it as part of an exam. But generally, I don't require that you read the book all the way through the course, because this book generally contains more information than I'm going to give you in the lectures. So if you don't understand something from the lecture, what you can do is you can read the equivalent chapter out of this book, and then maybe that'll help you to understand. But I don't require that you read this book except during the open book exam at the end of the course. Okay, so what are we going to learn? I will now tell you basically what you're going to spend your time doing every week for this course. First of all, anatomy is traditionally taught using organ systems. So, for instance, in the old days, doctors and physicians used to try and learn about the human body by memorizing the names and the functions of every part without any system or any order to what they're memorizing. But then they discovered that people had found it much easier to memorize the names and the functions of all the body parts if you studied the body parts that are related to each other and the body parts that are involved in the same functions as a group. And so the organs that are all involved in the same process, the same biological process, are considered to be an organ system. And so, for example, all of the bones are considered to be the skeletal system. We call that the skeletal system. So they give the body support and so on. Then the muscles help the bones to move. We call that the muscular system. Combined, these two organ systems are sometimes called the musculoskeletal system. So you would learn about those together, basically. If you take the brain and the spinal cord and all of the nerves that come out of the spinal cord, that's called the nervous system, right? So you would spend a week or two learning the names of the important nerves and the different parts of the brain, which is what we're going to do. And then the circulatory system includes the heart and the blood vessels. So then you spend a week learning about the heart, and then you learn the names of the key blood vessels and so on. But you learn the different organs that are related to the same functions at the same time. So this is called an organ systems approach to learning anatomy. It's been used now for about 150 years, and it seems to work much better than the old system of just memorizing the parts regardless of what they do. And so we're going to respect that system. We're going to respect that method of teaching anatomy and physiology. Okay, so what you'll do each week, if you go to the Moodle page for this course and you simply scroll down the page, you'll see that I've told you what to do every week. And there are a number of links on every week. There's a little section for every week what you're supposed to do, and there are links to different videos and documents and so on that are highlighted in blue. And if you click on those links, the web page will simply take you there. Right, so each week what you'll do is we're going to study, generally, we're going to study one and sometimes two organ systems per week. So let's say that we're studying one organ system per week. So the first thing you do is you watch a lecture, a video of a lecture that I've given on this. The lecture videos look a lot like what you're looking at right now. And so you watch a lecture video on one of the organ systems. If necessary, I have also included the lecture slides on the website so that you can just look at the slide portion without having to listen to all the narration. Right, so there will also be, for each week, there'll be a PDF file on the website where you can just click on it and view the slides alone without the narration. If you're still confused, feel free to read the anatomy textbook, the OpenStax anatomy textbook. And then each week I will be assigning you to read a chapter from the anatomy coloring workbook on the same organ system. So if we're in week 8, for instance, the organ system of that week is the cardiovascular system, the heart and the blood vessels. So I will give a lecture on the cardiovascular system, and then I'll assign you to read the anatomy coloring workbook chapter on the cardiovascular system, the circulatory system. And then on the Wednesday of each week, you have to write 2 little tests on that system and some other things. So on Wednesday, you complete what's known as an open book test on the cardiovascular system. An open book test means that you are allowed to have the anatomy and physiology coloring book in front of you while you're doing the test. You are assigned to read the chapter. You will be assigned to read the chapter on the cardiovascular system before you start the open book test, because if you try, you'll be given an hour and a half to complete the open book test, and the test will ask you multiple choice questions about things that you've read in that chapter. And so you're given an hour and a half to do it. The number of questions for the open book test will vary, but generally it's around 40 or 50, sometimes up to 70 or 80 questions. And they're not hard. They are multiple choice questions, but you will not have time to read the chapter and look for the answers to the questions in the book at the same time. That's why I say you must read the coloring book chapter ahead of time. and then take the open book test, so that when I ask you the questions, these multiple choice questions, you'll have an idea of approximately where in that chapter to look. Right? You'll have an idea of approximately where to look. So if you try to read the chapter and then answer the questions while the test is in progress, you'll never have enough time to finish. Okay, so every week you will complete an open book test. This is where you're allowed to look at the book. Right? All of the other tests, you're not allowed to look at any books. You have to do the exercise or the test or the exam from memory. You're not allowed to look at a book. You're not allowed to search the internet. You're not allowed to communicate with anybody else. That's a general rule for all of the tests. You are never allowed to communicate with anybody else for any of these tests. You can't talk to anybody. You can't ask anybody's advice. You can't text anybody. You can't Google things. You can't look in Wikipedia during a test. That's a general rule for all exams and all tests at Columbia College, as well as all of the other colleges and universities around the world. All right, so the open book test, because it's called an open book test, specifically tells you that the one thing you're allowed to do on these tests, the open book tests, is to look in your coloring book. I would not advise to look in any other book, because the questions I'm asking you, I took the questions out of this book. So if you're looking in another book, or if you do a Google search, which of course you're not allowed to do, but if you do that anyway, you will get an answer that's not in the book, and that answer will be wrong. So I strongly advise you not to be tempted to cheat on any of these exams by Googling things or looking in Wikipedia, or looking at any of the other websites that offer this kind of information, because the answers to all the tests that I give come out of the coloring book or the textbook or my lecture. If you give a different answer that you got from searching the internet, for instance, that answer is different than the one I taught you, then it would be wrong. So I don't advise doing that. Okay, now in addition to the open book test on Wednesday, which you'll be given an hour and a half to complete, each Wednesday you'll also be given a 20-minute quiz on all of the previous readings. So for instance, if during week 3 we study histology, that means that during week 3 you'll have to read the chapter on histology from the coloring book, and then you'll do an open book test on histology on Wednesday. And then that's fine. And then the following week, if we're doing the bone system, the skeletal system, you'll do a reading chapter on the skeletal system in the coloring book. You'll do an open book chapter on the skeletal system, and then you'll have a quiz on everything up before that week, everything that preceded that week. So that would include the readings that you did the week before on histology. So the quiz and the open book test are all multiple choice. For the open book test, you get 1.5 hours to complete it. You may have up to 50-60 questions or so, but the answers can be found in the book, and you're allowed to look in the book during the open book test. During the quiz, you have 20 minutes to complete 40 questions. Now that may not seem like much time, and I realize that it's stressful. It's actually intended to be a little bit stressful, mainly because we learn things better if we're under a little bit of stress, right? So if we're not under stress at all, we tend not to learn anything. If we're under too much stress, we don't learn anything that way either. But a little bit of stress is helpful, right? And creating a little bit of stress with a restricted time frame is actually helpful to the learning process. And so you're given only 20 minutes to complete 40 multiple choice questions, and those multiple choice questions could have come from any of the previous week's readings from the coloring book. Right? So the 20-minute tests that you'll be doing every week are cumulative. They include questions from all of the previous sections. Now the purpose of the open book test is to give you a reason to read and study and scrutinize your anatomy and coloring workbook. And the purpose of the 20-minute quiz is to give you a reason, to give you an incentive to review the material that you've already learned regularly. So every week we have the open book test, and we have the 20-minute quiz on the previous material, which means that every week it's in your interest to do a little review of what you learned previously. Probably, I was a student for a very long time, and I know good things and bad things about being a student. And one of the bad things about being a student is when you study something and then you learn it just long enough to write the test, and then when you pass the test, and when the test is over, you forget it. And the reason why you forget it is because you didn't practice retrieving the information that you learned. So learning it is not enough. You have to practice retrieving the information frequently, and then you'll find that if you review the information that you've learned in the previous weeks regularly, pretty soon you won't have to review it anymore because it will be committed to memory. You will know it, and you won't have to review it anymore. And that is the whole idea. Right, so the open book test is to basically pay you with marks for reading the book and studying the book, and then the quiz is paying you with marks to review the material regularly. And so that basically I'm rewarding you with points, with marks for the course, for studying and reviewing, which many other courses may not do. But I know that it's very important that these things be done, so that's why I'm actually rewarding you with marks for doing it. So there are 11 open book tests. They're worth 2% each. That's 22% of your grade. There are 11 weekly quizzes, 2% each. That's worth another 22%. So the lab, what's known as the lab section of this course, is worth 44% of your grade. In addition to that, so that the lab, what are known as the lab exercises, watching the video, reviewing the slides, reading the chapter from the coloring book, doing the open book test, and doing the 20-minute quiz. Those are what will take up most of your time for the week. Another thing about the short time frame for the quiz is that again, it's meant to be done from memory. You're not allowed to talk to anybody, communicate with anybody, not allowed to look up answers anyplace. And so by giving you just 30 seconds to answer each question, I've made it impossible. I haven't given you enough time to look anything up. And that's the idea. Sadly, if we were doing this in the classroom and I could be sure that you're not looking in a book to find the answers, then we might give you more time. But because we're forced to do this over the internet during the pandemic, we have to do it a little differently. So this is one of the sacrifices that we've had to make in order to make this course work as a distance education course. Okay, so those exercises will take up most of your time during the week. In addition, there'll be a midterm exam, which is slightly different than these quizzes because they're not multiple choice. The midterm exam will be short answers, short essay questions, and a few multiple choice questions as well. The midterm exam is worth 20%, and there will be a final exam worth 30%. Again, the final exam will be the same format as the midterm. It will contain some multiple choice questions, but also some short answer questions, one-word questions, and some short essay questions where you have to write 200 words or less about a certain system or something like that, those types of questions. Right? And in addition to that, because muscles are so important to anatomy and there are a lot of muscles to memorize, there will be a muscle quiz that will be worth 3% of your grade. And because blood vessels are so important, there are so many blood vessels to learn the names of, there will be a blood vessel test that's worth 3% of your mark as well. Right, so the lab section, the weekly quiz, and the weekly open book test, all of those together will be worth 44% of your grade, 20% for the midterm, 30% for the final, and then 3% for the muscle test, 3% for the blood vessel test. And if you're curious about the exact date of the midterm and the final, there is a course calendar on this website. You can follow the link and you can take a look at it. All right, now just a little word about the videos. One of the good features about the videos is that they are stored on YouTube. So you can see that the videos are actually stored on YouTube. So when you click on the link, it will take you to a framed YouTube video. If you then click on the word YouTube on the bottom right-hand side of the YouTube screen, it will take you to the YouTube website. And then under these dots, see these dots here in the bottom corner? You will find another menu. If one of the options is that you can click on Open Transcript, and it will open up a transcript, closed caption transcript of the words that I'm speaking. So if you're having trouble understanding my words as I'm speaking them, YouTube is great because it gives you the option of reading the transcript instead. Right, so here's the word pectoralis major, which is part of the transcript, right? So if I pronounce pectoralis major poorly and you don't understand, or I said it too fast and it's hard to, I'm speaking too fast and it's hard to follow me, you can simply activate the transcript. You can do that with this video too right now. You can do that with this video and try out the transcript. So that's one of the big advantages to doing this course over the internet as opposed to doing it in the classroom, because you have the option of reading the transcript. Okay, so what do these quizzes look like? So you read a chapter every week and then you do an open book test and a 20-minute quiz. What do they look like? Okay, so this is what your Moodle page looks like. This is just one of the weeks from your Moodle page. If you scroll down, you'll find it. And then you'll see that on week 8, we talk about the cardiovascular system. And then you see here it says watch lecture 10 part 1. So if you click on that blue link, it will take you to the YouTube video. You can watch the video, read the transcript, whatever you like. There's actually 3 parts to that particular lecture. I'm sorry about that, because it's a cardiovascular system is a very complicated organ system. So for that week only, we actually have to watch 3 lectures. But nevertheless, you watch the lectures, you go to YouTube, watch the lectures. You have the option of reading the slides without the narration. Right? That sometimes is faster to get through them. Then for that particular week, the Moodle page tells you to read chapter 7 in your coloring workbook on the cardiovascular system. And then when you're convinced you're ready, then prepare yourself for the test, which is on Wednesday. Now this is a mistake, because I'm showing you the Moodle page from the summer version of the course when the quiz was on a different day. But for you, it's going to be on Wednesday. Okay, so you open the anatomy quiz. It will appear. You click on that at the correct time, which will be 4 o'clock on Wednesday, right? And this will appear. So this will tell you that the quiz is not available until Thursday, September 3rd at 4 p.m. and the quiz will close on Thursday, September 3rd at 4:20, which means that you have only 20 minutes to write the quiz, as I said. And then you click on this little bar here, and that allows you to begin the quiz. Okay, so then it presents you with a bunch of multiple choice questions. So this particular one is actually from the nervous system. So here the question is, what do you call the mucous membrane that covers the outer surface of the eye and which is colored white? And you have 4 options, right? I've clicked on ocular conjunctiva, right? And then once you've entered your answer, remember you only have about 30 seconds to answer. Then you move to the next page and you answer the next question. Right? After the test is closed, after the test is over, you actually have the ability to view the correct answers. So you can view your mistakes and you can learn from your mistakes this way, and it's to your advantage to do that, because if you're doing this as an open book test and you get it wrong, you find out what the right answer is, that same question may reappear the next week in the 20-minute quiz. Right? So all the questions that I ask in the open book test may appear in future quizzes. Right, so bear that in mind. Remember that you have the option of reviewing the correct answers for all of these questions after the test is over. Okay, so that's what will take up most of your time each week. Now, you may have noticed that the outline for this course says that it's a lab course. That's why it's worth 4 credits instead of 3. And back at Columbia College, we have a wonderful anatomy lab that's filled with thousands and thousands of dollars worth of anatomical models, skeletons, muscle models, dissected organs, human and animal organs, slides, and so on. We can't get to it during the pandemic. So generally, when we were delivering this course in person, the weekly lab would be for the students to read a chapter in the coloring book, complete a coloring book exercise. They would come to the lab on their lab day. I would check the coloring book to make sure they'd done the exercise. And then we would begin the lab period by having a 20-minute quiz. And that's exactly what you're going to do, except over the internet. Right? The 20-minute quiz would be on all the previous organ systems. And then the students would spend the rest of the lab, about an hour and a half, I would hand out a test where they would do a test where they would answer questions about the anatomical models that we have in the lab. So they would do exercises with the models and the dissected organs. And that would be worth another 2% of their grade. So the quiz would be worth 2%. The in-lab exercise would be worth 2% as well. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, we can't do that. So the open book exercise is meant to substitute for the anatomical models exercise. Right? So if the college eventually opens back up after we've conquered the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, we can go back to that. But for now, the lab exercises are reading the coloring book, doing the 20-minute quiz on the previous readings, and doing the open book exercise for that week's reading assignment. That is considered to be the lab exercise, which is worth 44% of your grade. Right? So hopefully in the future we'll be able to get back into the anatomy lab, but as long as we have to stay at home due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the best we can do is to do this virtual lab where you're using your coloring book and answering questions about your coloring book rather than answering questions about some anatomical models that we have in the college anatomy lab. This is how the grades are distributed. So you do your weekly lab quizzes. They're worth 2% each for a total of 22%. We do our weekly open lab book exercise, open book coloring book exercises. Those are worth 22% in total. We have a midterm worth 20%. A test on muscles, which is worth 3%, a test on blood vessels, which is worth 3%, and a final exam, which is worth 30% for a total of 100%. And so this is what you're going to spend most of your week doing if you decide you want to stay in this course. Some of you might view this video and think, I don't really like all of this. You're free to withdraw from the course. Bear in mind that if you have until Friday to withdraw from the course. You have until Friday the 11th or Saturday the 12th, I believe, to withdraw from the course and get all your money back. You can withdraw from the course later on, but you won't get any money back. And I believe you're able to withdraw from the course and get a W on your transcript, W meaning withdraw, for up until week 9 or something like that. So it's totally up to you. But most of your, try watching the first video and now I should mention that during the first week, I'm aware that most of you will not have your coloring book yet. So there's no quiz and no lab exercise for the first week. However, on the Moodle page, I've given you a PDF document called Handout 1, which does a little bit of explanation about an introduction to anatomy and anatomical positioning, which is the way that we describe different parts of the body. Is it above or below another body part? Is it to the left or right of another body part? There's a very specific language that anatomists use to describe these things. And so the first exercise is about that. So what's going to happen is during the first week we have no lab quiz, no lab open book test. During the second week we will have the first quiz, which is about Handout 1. And we will have open book exercise 1, which is about Handout 1 as well. Okay, then hopefully all of your coloring books will be in the mail and you will have received them by the third week. If you haven't received your book by the third week, I did download the PDF of chapters 1 and 2 to the website so you can read those. And so during week 2 we have a quiz on the previous week's material, which is the handout, and then we have an open book exercise based on chapters 1 and 2 from the coloring book. And so you'll do that. And then in week 4 the quiz will be from chapters 1 and 2 of the coloring book as well as the handout. That's all the previous material, plus the chapter on histology and the integument. And so you can see that the quizzes will just become more and more cumulative. They'll cover more and more things. But the weekly open book test will always only contain questions about the chapter that you were assigned to read that week. Okay, so that's how the course works. I would recommend that you read the handout that I've supplied, which goes into greater detail about how the course works, but this was just to give you a general overview. So good luck with the course, and I would also say have fun, although I know that studying is always a little bit stressful. But I hope when you look back on it someday after the stress is all gone, you will have found this to be a fun course, but also an informative course and a useful course. All right, and good luck, and I will see you at the next lecture number 1.